Camera pushes in on a modern science lab, shelves stacked with bottles and equipment. A young man in a navy blue shirt steps aggressively toward a young black boy, his voice sharp and mocking. He sneers. "What are you even doing here?" "This place isn't for people like you." The young man jabs a finger at his chest, leaning in close, trying to intimidate him. The black boy locks eyes with him, calm and defiant, refusing to flinch. The other students in navy shirts freeze, wide-eyed, whispering among themselves as the tension spikes. But what this bully didn't know is that the boy he's insulting carries a past far more powerful than anyone here could imagine. The screen darkens slightly with bold text. Before the story continues, tell me, from which country are you watching right now and what time is it there? Drop it in the comments. I love seeing where you're tuning in from. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. The laboratory at St. Clair Academy of Science and Innovation gleamed under the soft glow of overhead lights. Walls of glass bottles and carefully labeled flasks lined the shelves, while the faint smell of disinfectant mixed with the metallic tang of new equipment. Students bustled around their workstations, white coats swishing and voices low, trying not to disturb the fragile order of the prestigious academy's most prized space. It was a place of learning, discipline, and discovery, at least for most. At one workstation, Malik Carter stood quietly, arranging his beakers in precise order. He had been at St. Clair for only 2 weeks, yet he carried himself with a sense of discipline that made him seem older than his years. His navy shirt, though the same as everyone else's, was pressed sharply, every crease deliberate. He barely spoke unless spoken to, and when he did, his voice was calm, measured, never hurried. That quietness, however, had not gone unnoticed. In a school where privilege often spoke louder than ability, Malik's silence became an invitation. From across the lab, Ethan Rose smirked. He was the son of a wealthy industrialist, the kind of boy who had never heard the word no in his life. His hair was slicked back with precision, his shirt untucked just enough to signal arrogance. Trailing behind him was his loyal clique. 3 other boys in the same navy shirts, always laughing at his jokes, always ready to echo his cruelty. Ethan nudged one of them with his elbow, nodding toward Malik. "Watch this," he whispered. His grin widening, he strolled across the room with exaggerated swagger, the sound of his sneakers echoing against the tiled floor. The chatter in the lab dipped, as it often did when Ethan made a move. He thrived on the attention, and he knew he had it now. "Hey," Ethan said, his voice sharp, cutting through the hum of equipment. He leaned against Malik's workstation, knocking a pencil to the floor without care. "You're the new kid, right? Malik? Carter?" Malik glanced up briefly, his dark eyes calm. "Yes." Ethan tilted his head, mocking. "Yes," he repeated in a sing-song tone. His friends chuckled behind him. "Tell me, Carter, where'd they find you? Some backwater school? Or did they just need to fill a quota?" A ripple of laughter followed. Ethan basked in it. Malik didn't move, didn't even frown. He simply placed another beaker down with deliberate care. "Answer me when I talk to you," Ethan snapped, leaning in closer. "I did," Malik replied, his voice low but firm. The words were simple, but something about the way he said them made Ethan pause. There was no fear there, no hesitation, just steady resolve, like Malik had already measured him, weighed him, and found him insignificant. Ethan's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to defiance, especially not from someone like Malik. His clique murmured encouragement, sensing his pride was on the line. Ethan shoved the edge of Malik's notebook aside with his hand, trying to provoke a reaction. Malik's gaze finally lifted and locked with Ethan's. Calm, unflinching. The kind of look that didn't need words to speak volumes. For the first time, Ethan felt a flicker of something he didn't like. Unease. To most of the students at St. Clair Academy, Malik Carter was just the quiet new kid. He rarely joined in their chatter, never boasted about his background, and seemed content to sit alone during lunch, reviewing notes or sketching diagrams in a worn notebook. To Ethan Rowe and his clique, that silence was weakness. But Malik Carter was no ordinary student. Long before he stepped foot into the pristine halls of St. Clair, his mornings had started long before dawn. He could still remember the sharp trill of the bugle at Camp Ashford Military Cadet Academy, the place that had shaped him. There, boys his age were molded into something more. Not soldiers exactly, but disciplined leaders in training. In his mind, the lab's fluorescent hum faded, replaced by the echo of boots striking gravel in perfect rhythm. "Cadets, on your feet!" The commanding officer's voice had rattled the dorm walls. 10-year-old Malik had scrambled up with the others, heart pounding, blanket folded tight at the foot of his bunk. There was no room for laziness at Ashford. Every detail mattered, from the shine on his boots to the alignment of his bed sheets. The flashback sharpened. Malik running across a frost-covered field, breath turning white in the air. His legs burned, but the cadence chants kept him going. Discipline! Courage! Strength! Voices blended into one, each step driving the lesson deeper into his bones. Later came survival drills, long nights under the stars with nothing but a compass and a rucksack. He had learned how to ration food, how to navigate with the faintest glimmer of starlight, how to endure when exhaustion begged him to stop. Above all, he had learned restraint, that true strength was not about striking first, but about knowing when not to strike at all. Those lessons were etched into him, invisible to the students who now whispered about his silence. Back in the present, Malik placed a slide under the microscope and adjusted the lens, ignoring the hovering presence of Ethan at his shoulder. Ethan sneered, misreading his quiet focus as submission. "Look at him," Ethan muttered to his friends loud enough for half the lab to hear. "Doesn't even fight back, figures." His clique snickered. Malik heard it all, but his expression never changed. Years of being drilled under relentless instructors had taught him something most of these privileged boys would never grasp. Composure was its own form of power. Inside, though Malik's instincts measured Ethan carefully, the way his voice carried, the false bravado, the nervous glance to his friends for approval. Malik had seen boys like him before. Even in the cadet ranks, loud, arrogant, desperate to dominate, but fragile when tested. If Ethan thought Malik's silence was fear, he couldn't have been more wrong. Malik wasn't weak. He was waiting, watching, measuring, and when the time came, he would not. The days that followed did little to ease the tension inside the lab. Ethan Rowe, fueled by pride and the constant approval of his clique, seemed to take Malik's silence as a personal insult. Every time they crossed paths, Ethan found a way to throw in a comment, a smirk, or a jab meant to chip away at Malik's composure. But Malik did not flinch. He answered questions in class with the same steady tone, never rising to the bait. When Ethan accidentally knocked over his notes one afternoon, Malik simply picked them up, placed them back on the desk, and went on with his work. His calmness only fed Ethan's rage. It all came to a head one rainy Thursday afternoon. The lab buzzed with activity as students prepared chemical samples for an experiment. Glassware clinked, burners hissed, and the air smelled faintly of ethanol. Malik worked in silence at his bench, carefully measuring a solution. Across the room, Ethan watched, jaw tight. His friends nudged him. "Go on," one of them whispered. "He's making you look weak. Everyone thinks he's not scared of you." That was enough. Ethan strode across the room, his sneakers squeaking on the tiles, and stopped inches from Malik's station. He leaned over the bench, voice low and dripping with mockery. "So, Carter," he said, tapping the edge of Malik's beaker with a finger, "is this what you call talent? Measuring water and pretending you belong here?" Malik didn't look up. "Please don't touch the equipment," he said quietly, adjusting the pipette. Ethan's friends chuckled behind him. The sound was sharp, cruel, egging him on. "What's the matter?" Ethan pressed, his voice rising. "Too scared to answer me properly? Or maybe you're just used to keeping your head down. People like you always do." That drew attention. Heads turned from other benches. A hush fell, broken only by the hiss of burners and the drip of solutions. Ethan thrived on it. The stage was his, and Malik was the target. Malik finally raised his eyes. His gaze locked on Ethan's, steady and unwavering. There was no fear in it, no pleading, only quiet defiance. "Move," Malik said, his voice calm but edged with steel. The single word hit harder than a shout. Ethan blinked, caught off guard, then scowled. He shoved the notebook on Malik's desk to the floor, pages scattering across the tiles. Malik didn't move at first. Slowly, deliberately, he bent down, gathered the papers, and stacked them neatly again. His composure was infuriating. "Pick it up faster," Ethan barked. "Or do you need me to help you learn how?" The words carried an ugly undertone. The clique laughed, but uneasily. Malik's silence had weight, and they felt it. Malik straightened, his eyes never leaving Ethan's. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't step back. He simply stood, tall and unshaken. The stare between them stretched on. Ethan's smirk faltered. There was something unnerving in Malik's posture. Not the cowering submission he had expected, but the calm confidence of someone who had faced far worse. For the first time, Ethan felt the fragile edge of his control slipping, and that was the breaking point. The stare down in the lab left its mark. Word spread quickly through St. Clair Academy's pristine halls. Malik Carter, the quiet new kid, hadn't flinched when Ethan Rowe tried to humiliate him. Students who had once overlooked him began to watch with curiosity. Whispers floated in the cafeteria, the library, the courtyard. He didn't even blink. Ethan looked nervous. There's something different about that kid. Ethan, on the other hand, felt the walls closing in. He tried to laugh it off with his clique, boasting louder than ever, but the memory of Malik's unyielding stare gnawed at him. His pride demanded he reassert control, but every attempt only made the contrast clearer. Malik didn't react. Then came the revelation. It happened one evening in the academy library. Ethan's friend Kyle had been flipping through student files. Not officially, but his father was on the school board, and strings could be pulled. He smirked as he scrolled on the tablet, then suddenly froze. "Ethan?" Kyle whispered. "You're gonna want to see this." Ethan leaned over, impatient, until his eyes landed on the image. There was Malik, younger but unmistakable, standing tall in a crisp military cadet uniform. Medals gleamed on his chest. Behind him, a squad of cadets stood at attention. Malik in the center as their leader. The caption beneath the photo read, "Cadet Sergeant Malik Carter, Outstanding Leadership Award, Camp Ashford Youth Military Program." For a moment, Ethan didn't move. Then he forced a laugh. So what? He played soldier. Big deal. But the unease in his voice betrayed him. Kyle wasn't convinced. "Ethan, those programs aren't for weak kids. He's been trained. Discipline, tactics, leadership. No wonder he didn't back down." By the next morning, the photo had made its way across campus. Students huddled around phones, murmuring with newfound respect. Malik Carter wasn't just the quiet new kid anymore. He was something else. In the lab that afternoon, the air felt different. Ethan strutted in, trying to ignore the sideways glances, but he felt them. The whispers, the shift in the balance. Malik was already at his bench, calm as ever, methodically arranging his slides. "You think that picture changes anything?" Ethan snarled as he approached, his voice louder than necessary. His clique hung back, less certain than before. Malik looked up slowly. His gaze was steady, unhurried. "I don't need it to," he replied simply. The words stung more than Ethan expected. Around them, students leaned closer, pretending to focus on their work, while their ears caught every word. "You're not special," Ethan snapped, but his voice cracked slightly. "You think wearing a uniform makes you better than me?" Malik didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he closed his notebook, folded his arms, and said quietly, "I don't need to prove anything to you." That sentence, calm, controlled, and public, sliced deeper than any insult. It left Ethan standing there, fists clenched, face burning red, while the silence in the room seemed to mock him. His power, once unshakable, now felt like sand slipping through his fingers. For the first time, Ethan realized the truth. Malik hadn't been ignoring him out of fear. He had been choosing not to engage because he didn't have to. The bully had underestimated his target, and now the academy knew it too. The atmosphere at St. Clair Academy shifted in the days that followed. Malik Carter was no longer the quiet outsider whispered about in corners. He was the student people noticed, respected, and, in some cases, quietly admired. The photo of him in uniform still circled phones, each share sharpening the contrast between who he was and who Ethan had tried to make him appear to be. Ethan felt the change most of all. His clique had grown quieter, their laughter less certain, their eyes drifting toward Malik with a mix of curiosity and unease. Ethan could feel his grip slipping, and the cracks in his confidence widened with each passing day. He told himself he didn't care, but the truth gnawed at him. Every time Malik walked into a room, composed and self-assured, Ethan's chest tightened. That defiance, that calm strength, had unsettled him in ways he couldn't admit aloud. It all came to a head one Friday afternoon in the lab. The students gathered for their final experiments of the week, the air humming with the usual low chatter. Malik set up his station as always, precise, deliberate, steady. Ethan lingered by the door, debating. His pride screamed at him to reclaim his throne. His fear whispered that Malik was untouchable, but pride won. He crossed the room with his usual swagger, though his fists clenched tighter than he realized. His voice rang out louder than it needed to. "You think you're better than me, Carter? Walking around like you're untouchable?" The room fell quiet. All eyes shifted to Malik. Malik looked up, calm as ever. His voice was steady, almost gentle. "I don't think I'm better. I just know who I am." The words landed heavy. Ethan's smirk faltered, but he pressed on, desperate. "You think people respect you because of some uniform you used to wear?" Newsflash. This is St. Clair, not your little camp. Malik didn't flinch. He closed his notebook, stood, and faced Ethan fully. For a moment, the silence was so complete that even the hum of the lab equipment seemed to fade. "Respect isn't about uniforms," Malik said, his tone clear, carrying across the room. "It's about discipline, about knowing when to act and when to hold back. That's something you've never learned." A ripple moved through the class. Ethan felt it, the shift, the judgment, the weight of eyes measuring him against Malik and finding him lacking. His fists curled tighter. But deep down, he knew. If he lunged, if he tried to prove himself with force, it wouldn't end the way he wanted. Not because Malik would fight back, but because Malik didn't need to, and that was the lesson. Malik had been trained not only in strength, but in restraint. He could fight, yes, but his true power was choosing not to. Where Ethan's authority was built on fear and bluster, Malik's was rooted in self-control, in dignity. And everyone in that room saw the difference. Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. No words came. He turned sharply, muttering under his breath, and stormed out of the lab. His clique hesitated, then followed, their silence louder than any insult. Malik sat back down, quietly resuming his work as though nothing had happened. The other students exchanged glances, whispers buzzing, not of mockery this time, but of respect. He didn't gloat. He didn't smirk. He didn't need to. As the afternoon sun slanted through the lab windows, Malik Carter remained steady, calm, and unshaken. He had faced down privilege, arrogance, and hate, not with fists or fury, but with the discipline and dignity instilled in him long ago